set each and every year. So if we ever needed to raise or lower the amount in the revenue fund, we would do so at annual town meeting.
So yeah, I was just wondering if it didn't wanna outgrow it in 15, 20 years, you know? So if there's plans in there that meet that, then that's, you know.
Because that's a fun fact that a gentleman that was interviewing us today, who is a colleague of Steve Wendell's from WGAW in Gardner, brought up today that Hubbardston has doubled in size in the last 40 years.
Absolutely.
So,
I will say one thing, if we do nothing, we certainly don't have a 5, 10, 15, 1-year plan in place to accommodate any growth,
Absolutely.
right? There's a lot of space in that building, a lot of space.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ed?
What's the purchase price, on the, bill, on the building?
$700,000.
700.
You would have been proud of me if they started at just under $1 million. I started at 6.
You know how I like negotiation. That's a good buy.
I know. No offense, I'm gonna give Carrie most of that credit, not this
Thank you,
one.
I was gonna say, acts
If it
like
has
I
to come
wasn't
to
even
the
there.
Negotiations, just, no offense, Nate,
Carrie's the
I know Carrie very well, and I know you very well, and I'm gonna put my eggs in
It
Carrie's
was a good
basket
buy,
for
'cause we
now.
capped you at 700. His hands were tied, yeah.
Carrie was there. The Public Safety Building Committee has gone above and beyond in this process. The amount of work that has gone in by every single member over there, they're all volunteers. I don't think the building inspection would have gone as good as it did this past week if Mike Stoll wasn't there running ladders around for the guy and putting in his 2 cents. Mike's been handling things on Facebook. Carrie's been there for me every step of the way, whether it was looking at other properties or going out on a expedition to Lord knows where to look at their public safety building. This has been a great group of people to work with, regardless of how this ends.
Anything else? Anybody? I'd like to put something out, based on our meeting this morning. We had a public, meeting with the, seniors. One of the things that one of the, seniors, a question she raised indicating that not from her point of view, but there was, apparently was several who did not have this information or were confused about it, and that is, combination of why did everything happen so fast and so forth and so on, and what is going to happen, for example, if it didn't pass. The key to all of that, and what she did not know, and she recommended we try to get the information out, as we told her, regardless of whether we get it or not, that building is going to auction. Or the position of the owner, she just wants to get rid of it. And this is what caused the speed on our part when we heard about that. We knew that we wanted to try to make an offer first, because we had decided as a board that, and we told Nate, $700,000 was his top no matter what. And he went directly to the source, and as I said, the owner just wants to get rid of the building. So that figure she took. Point I'm trying to make for the public is, let's say we didn't get this, that building is still going, whether we have it or not. So as far as what is our situation gonna be, what the business is gonna be, it would all depend on who got it. So that's why we moved as fast as we did, and we were fortunate enough to have a figure that they would take with the idea, it goes back to you folks, the town, at the town meeting.
And it took a little bit of smoothing out. They wanted to have their auction. Like Carrie and I originally were able to save $2,000 because I wanted to not have to tell the select board that I maxed out. So I tried my best we negotiated down ever so slightly, but then they brought us back to the table looking to get to $750 or closer to their number. But through negotiations, we were able to stay right there and get the purchase and sale, and I do thank Carrie and everybody for working with us on that, and they were actually quite nice during negotiations, like it was not super painful, but I'm glad we got here, and with the select board support, we were able to move quite quickly.
Jeff, Heather's raised their hand.
Oh, no, Heather, something else? Heather, can you hear me?
It was raised earlier.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. 2 questions that were raised. The first one comes from Travis Buzzle. It's relative to long-term debt impacts. What is the estimated total long-term debt impact on the town if phase 2 is approved?
I actually
How will
have
this
a whole.
affect-
Go ahead,
Sorry,
sorry.
it's a 2-parter. How will this affect the town's overall financial health and credit rating?
Hi Travis, so there's actually in that Google Drive attached to the website a whole 30-year plan on how this would roll out. And the credit, health, and bond rating, the town actually does not have the recommended amount of debt out per the budget to kind of rank creditworthy as is. So it wouldn't hurt us in our fiscal health or bond rating, which we currently do not have a bond rating because you need bonds to have a bond rating, and the school roof is still in a temporary status while we wait for the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority.
All right, and then I have a second question from Marcia LaCroix. Does this project assume there will be a 2.5 proposition override?
No.
This project assumes there will be a debt exclusion vote. A 2.5 override is long term. It's forever. Would be for operating costs. It's something that the administration, the select board, department heads are all working really diligently to stay away from, but it's getting harder every single year. A debt exclusion would be for the life of the loan. Let's say it's 30 or 40 years. It would take that outside of the parameters of 2.5, and there would be that amount of tax for the life of the project, and then it would go away.
So just to be very, very clear, we are not talking about a debt exclusion for phase 1.
No.
Phase 2, we'll get to that when we get to that.
And just to let it be known, there's almost no other way for us to accomplish that. Like, the
Right.
debt exclusion would be accompanying phase 2. The town does not
But-
have the reserves to.
But the numbers that we have on the website are not showing a huge increase in tax.
No.
Right.
And those numbers are before any grants are applied.
Yep.
I just wanna make sure that these statements get on the record, rather than people going, oh my God, they want a debt exclusion in phase 1, and, then that just.
No. Say phase 1 went through and then all the businesses very, very quickly found new homes. If we had to permanently borrow on phase 1, it would end up costing the average taxpayer 9 cents, 9 cents
per
Yeah.
thousand.
per $1,000 in valuation.
That's if
$90.
all the current tenants just on day 1 left.
Yeah.
If they stay, there's no impact.
And adversely, if the good people of Hubbardston did not approve anything for phase 2, we would hopefully keep the businesses longer, take a 10-year borrow out and utilize the lease revenue to pay that off. But that's something I'm hoping we don't have to do either. I'm hoping we fall somewhere in the middle of those two.
But also, if I can reiterate, the numbers that are on the literature that we've put out, they're all estimates. And we mentioned this earlier tonight, but just to mention it again, they're estimates, but that does not include, once we get the property, grants or anything else that might be coming our way is going to take those estimates and make them even lower. So that at the numbers that you see right now are estimates and could very possibly be a lot less, and that just lowers everything proportionally. Anything else? Ed?
Blanchard, 23 East Common Pond Road. As we move to phase 2, would we take another look at 60 Gardner Road? Jan Jansen's property,
No.
because all of the buildings would be there and be suitable for the fire department.
It's already
It
been
was
turned
discovered,
down.
we looked through it, the current owner was not interested in doing the environmental feasibility studies that would have been required to move forward with that. There is a open conversation, but I also firmly believe that fitting that to fit what we need would cost even more than this. Like over there, yes, it's easy to see that there is a large garage. Like that is quite obvious, but it would need a whole new heating system. The police would have nowhere to go. Like that would likely be able to be a decent fix for a fire department if we knew what was under the ground after being a automotive dealership for X number of years. Like it's just
You need a
something.
21E study,
Yeah. It was gonna be around $20,000 to start the conversation, and the town was not able legally to assist with that because we did not have a stake in the property.
Another reason, for example, why, as I put it, this opportunity was just, we couldn't afford to ignore it. Because of all the investigation we've done and all the, over the years now, trying to find a place, cause we knew was out. So we've been trying to find something else, and when we heard about this, we wanted to at least get a chance at it, because, the opportunity, if it all works, solves a lot of our problems with our buildings. So it was just too good to let, without making the effort to try to get it, because something like this is not gonna come again.
And I do ask people to remember, like everyone's been saying, oh, new versus renovated, new versus renovated. A $7.3 to $9.5 million renovation is gonna seem pretty darn near new. Like it's not gonna be just, oh, let's put up some drywall and send the police in there, like, but we've done something.
We
Like,
spackled.
yeah, this is gonna be significant.
And if you think of that in comparison of what would the estimate for a new building would be, right now is between 19 and 21 million. And that would only be for fire and police. The rest of the plan, we'd still be here, the seniors would be here. We still couldn't get money for the library because we'd still be in the basement. Because it's a historical building, it can't get a dime in terms of grants until we're out of there. So that, it's quite a good deal, we think.
And there's no other place in Hubbardston
Right, that too.
for the future. You know, if we say, well, we'll just wait for the next building to come along, there is no next building.
No, and we know we're not gonna get a new one, so that's.
Yeah.
Share, Heather has her hand
Yeah,
raised.
Heather, go ahead.
We have a question from Jassy Bradco. If the town purchases the building but declines a debt exclusion, it is assumed rents will cover a loan to pay for all repairs. The town will now be a commercial landlord? ?
While there's tenants,
While,
yeah.
while there's tenants, yes,
Yes.
and we would work towards finding another way to get there. That, it would be my hope that by taking on this first step, most people are committing to do something. We, doesn't mean full-fledged funding immediately, but we would wanna see something done here. But the complete first phase loan would be paid off within 10 years.
There is a question from the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of talk about grants. What's the, like, the timeline on that, from the time that you apply for a grant to the time whether it gets approved or?
If I knew that, I wouldn't be working here.
You'd be a professional grant writer taking a cut.
No, it's variables, it's all over the place. Some grants are relatively quickly, some you know you're gonna get pretty much right off the bat. Others are multi-year, federal funded, you apply, you don't hear back, and then someday you do, or someday you hear no. Like, there's just so many variables. Like, I professionally will not speak to what we could, should, or would get in terms of grants, just cause it wouldn't be, not a weatherman, and I don't really trust the weatherman anyway.
Yeah, we can apply for grants. Having a building that we say to, you know, the different parties involved in providing grants, we have a stake in the game. We own a building that needs to be improved, whether that's installing a new generator or installing a new elevator or whatever the case might be. We own the building, or hopefully we will own the building. Now we are able to apply for grants.
So
Right.
it's just step one.
Whereas if everyone said, no, we want a new building, well, that goes back to Jeff's point, it doesn't solve senior center, doesn't solve the library, it only solves fire and police, which we all agree we need to do something better than what we have. But in order for us to do that $19 to $21 million building, Hubbardston would have to say, we will pay $19 to $21 million for that building. And only then, once the voters have said, yeah, we do, only then could we then apply for grants to offset that cost. And it's still probably gonna be more than the total package of this.
Many people have been asking and sharing stories on Facebook of articles of what if a program like the Massachusetts School Building Authority was made for public safety buildings and municipal offices. And the answer to that in Hubbardston's case is we have been lobbying our state legislators for that for at least the last decade. It is a bill that's there every year. I was able to actually ask a variety of state legislators about it at an MMA conference last year, and the general consensus from members of the Senate and House was, oh boy, wouldn't everyone love that, but how would we fund it? And on top of that, if it were to happen after we did purchase this, we would qualify. Like, the fact that we had a renovation project that was already cooking would qualify for such program, which does not exist at this current moment. And it's the end of a legislative session right now, so not coming in the next few days either.
When was
Yes.
the building built? When was it built?
1990.
1990, so fairly new. And by purchasing it and doing the improvements, we're essentially ensuring that the building isn't gonna further deteriorate and become abandoned and so on and so forth.
That's what I was waiting for someone to start. So at noon
Go write the
today,
check
our bids came through, and we got a competitive bid of, I don't wanna say who the company is yet, cause I have to check their references and make sure I do my due diligence, but $472,000 for the roof, the siding, the windows, the doors, the gutters, and the downspouts. So that would be
Watertight.
watertight
Watertight.
And looking pretty.
and looking pretty. Yeah, and then it would be $700,000 for the purchase of the building, and I have $300,000 allocated in my proposal for code compliance, design, and planning. If that number were to be brought down, we can have that conversation. The grand total is $1,472,000. That's what I am proposing to bring to the special town meeting next week.
Does that include leeway per se? Say a cost comes up just a little bit for
Not a ton,
materials
but
and
that 300 has a little bit of contingency built into it. We won't know exactly how much contingency until we start really opening things up and looking at what code compliance we're going to need to fix, how much an engineer costs. But there's a little bit of wiggle room.
Another point to reinforce, if we only get the building, and in phase two, we stall, okay? Doesn't matter how much time, but something happens like that, or to Jazzy's point of view. We have, by having the building, we have at least protected our fire department.
Yes.
And by owning the building, we've also saved $23,000 a year on rent for our fire department. So, this is an important point to make for the entire project, simply because, as we mentioned earlier tonight, should we not get this and the building disappears and they move the fire department out, we are now a town with a fire department and no place to go.
In a parking lot with a.
And trying to
Yeah.
to be a safe emergency service. I mean, that is, it's not made up, that is a possibility should that happen, because as I said earlier, the building's gonna be sold or torn or on auction, whether we get it or not. So that, the very least we'll get out of that is, as I said, our fire department would be guaranteed.
Does the revenue from the fire department go into the department funds budget, or does it go into general fund?
The chief and I are gonna arm wrestle about that.
Okay.
No.
Well, I didn't know where it sits now, where it sits currently,
Mud wrestle.
you
No,
know.
the money is taken into consideration when we're talking about the ability to pay off the loans. I'm sure the chief would love to be able to have a little bit more wiggle room. I don't think that's how I know that's not how year 1, year 2 is gonna be, but potentially down the road, there is a little bit of operational wiggle room, but.
I was more talking now, where does department revenue, does it go into the department budget, or does it go into general?
Ambulance revenue?
Yeah, ambulance
So
or
ambulance revenue
permits.
is a line item in our general revenue budget, and it was $182,000 last year. That is a lot of the reason the select board, the finance committee, myself and the department made the proposal to do the $15,000 stipend to test the water on what overnights could potentially look like.
So losing ambulance operation would actually be pulling directly that money from our general fund, not just the fire
Yes.
department.
And also, another point to consider, we are spending $23,000 a year on that
Oh, thank you.
facility at 48 Gardner Road, which means we have already sunk in $500,000 into that building with nothing to show for it. We have no equity in that building. We've
I feel
already
like that
paid
money-
$500,000 in rent
I feel
to
like
that
that money
building.
could have paved Dogwood North by now.
You had to go there.
See myself.
Yeah.
But also by phase 1, buying the property and making the renovations of just the roof, the windows, the siding and everything else, just that alone is gonna bring up the value of this
Yeah.
building. So we're going into it, fixing it right off the bat and increasing the value of the building. So, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, it sells itself at this point.
Heather?
Fixing it, at least
Just a minute, sir.
So,
Heather, go ahead.
we have another question from Travis Buzzle. Where are the leaks coming from, and has that created structural issues we may not know about yet?
So we were down there yesterday, and it seemed that a lot of the wet spots in the roof were actually from frozen and busted pipes, which we would be able to remedy by working with Mass Saves to install proper installation. We will be getting the report from the commercial building inspector over the next few days, but I'd like to pass it to Public Safety Building Committee member Mike Stoll to see if he has any opinion on that while we're talking about the subject.
Thank you, Nate.
Do you know the question?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
But I think it's a little premature to answer that until we get the building inspection report.
I agree.
Anything else, Heather?
And Travis, I wouldn't call the building currently watertight. Like, these are 30, pushing 40-year-old parts.
Yeah. Yeah,
accoutrements.
some, especially like around the windows and things like that, just airtight, watertight. There's a lot of, I would imagine, drafts, just looking at it from when I walk through. It's just, like, why have a
And-
window at all?
And doing this initial weatherproofing will lower our costs of heating
Yep.
and air conditioning.
Not to mention, it will also help the businesses that are there.
Right.
With the, you know, it's like, it's a win-win for everyone involved.
And adding to this winning equation is the fact that we have yet to do so, but we can offer a long-standing deal with Monty Tech where they can come in and do some of the smaller project areas that aren't crucial and need a pro, because there's gonna be a lot of that. So if we can develop some sort of long-standing arrangement where, over the next 5 years, we partner together to do X, Y, and Z, and we'll buy the materials and the students will do the labor, that would be even better.
Putting up walls, running electrical, plumbing, etc.
And they do nice work too.
They do.
Yeah.
That's not something we've spoken to them yet
No,
about, but I don't really wanna spend a ton of time, and I have spent a ton of time doing things for this project until it's real.
Anything else, Heather?
There are no additional questions in the chat at this time.
Okay, we have another one here.
I had just one more for clarification, and I swear I'll stop asking about the grants.
That's okay.
So the information, the questions that everybody's been asking about the grants, these questions can't be answered right now currently, I understand that. But before phase 2, we should have some answers on those grant questions, correct? Because
Some.
once we buy the building, we can start applying for grants, and we should have at least an understanding of what we are getting for grants.
We
At
may
a
even
low
get
level.
some.
Yeah.
Might even
Before-
have some
yeah.
by that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's incredibly feasible, that we will have something, like, we have to be strategic because of matching funds, because of availability,
Yep.
because of the general status of the operating budget. We
Yep.
just have to be really strategic. We can't just say, that company or that organization will give us $1 million if we put down $500,000, 'cause where are we gonna get that? And that would be great, but they don't make grants to then turn around and match grants.
Sure.
I wish they did, but even at that point, there will still be variables. But I am hoping that whether it be a state earmark, a low-hanging fruit grant, I'm hoping we see our first return on investment grant-wise within the next year.
So,
Fair enough.
I just have one
Go ahead.
quick question. So phase 1, you can only apply for grants because we've already, let's say we get approved by the town to purchase this and go forward, we can only do grants for the first phase. You can't apply for grants for the second phase until that's approved,
We
correct?
could technically apply for grants, we own the building, we could apply for a grant for this
Yeah,
building for.
now, whether now, if the town turned down phase 2, you can always not turn down the grant.
Yep,
correct?
or say the grant was, we got a very generous
Yeah.
grant to say, you know what, we'll put in $4 million to retrofit a police station. Then we take that completely out of phase 2 and we talk about everything else, like,
Okay.
I hope we run into that kind of opportunity.
Yeah, I say you apply for all the grants up front in phase 1, and if you get approved for grants touching phase 2, it's a lot easier to bring it to the town
Right.
for approval.
It could be
with
2A.
grant money hanging there, waiting to be picked.
It could be,
Well, that's
it could
kind
be
of what I
phased.
was getting at,
Right,
is if we
so-
have an answer to that question,
Right.
if we purchase the building and then we can answer the grant questions,
Right.
that's, I feel like people are gonna wanna see that.
It
Like, I'm
makes it a
pro,
lot
I'm
easier
pro
on
buying
the-
the building, I
on
don't
the
want
tax
anybody to get
pocket.
confused here.
We could do a phase 2A, 2B, 2C.
Right.
Okay, Chris.
You know, and I think Nate said this a couple times already, I mean, we can apply for the grants, but we gotta do it wisely, and, you know, there's different timeframes for different grants, right? We can apply as soon as we acquire the building, if we acquire the building.
Right.
But we may not know for weeks if we're gonna get that grant, or months if we're gonna get that
Maybe a
grant.
year.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And grants have this fun, cute little thing they do where they tell you that they loved your application in next year's grant cycle.
Yeah.
And then push you down the road.
So, I mean, we'll constantly continue to apply for applicable grants, that make sense for the town and don't have matching numbers to them, but, you know, we can't answer that question definitively because we don't know what we're gonna be awarded for grants or what, you know, percentage of the grant, like Nate talked about earlier, we might get awarded for.
Sure, but the answer wouldn't just be, I don't know,
Right.
at that point, is more, I guess, my point.
The answer would be less, I don't know.
Right, okay.
At that point.
Jeff, Heather?
Yeah, Heather, go ahead.
Thanks, Peter, for watching out for me. So,
I'm here for you, Heather.
we, thank you. We have a follow-up question, from Marsha LaCroix. Could some of these potential grants be denied to us because, like the library, it is not solely used for fire and or police?
No.
I'll ask the follow-up, why?
The library is, it's a historical building. And when Clark, Jonas Clark donated it to the town, it was with the stipulation in perpetuity that it would only be and always be used as a library. And until that happens, the historical aspect of it in terms of grants will not kick in, because we have our offices there. I learned the other day, because this was before I moved to Hubbardston 23 years ago, but at one point, and I didn't know this, the police department was in there.
I remember that.
So it's been used for a lot of things other than what Clark intended to, but we are restricted by that. But once we're out, then the door's open to the historical aspect of it, and they can get a ton of grants.
And the select board's executive assistant is actually a part-time employee over at the library, and she did some research for me a few weeks ago. We're leaving millions of dollars potentially, like obviously, just like all the other grants, it's not a sure thing, but the library is leaving over the next decade or two, potentially millions of dollars on the table in terms of grants that they are ineligible for because of the current situation with the town offices.
And that frees up the CPC from giving more money to the library. Excuse me, Dolores Ordway High Street.
Heather's got a question, Jeff.
Oh, another one? Go ahead, Heather.
I originally thought it was another question, but, I think we're all set on that. I was just going to add that in regards to that last question, you know, I think it's still less likely that we would lose out on grants because everything was in one building. A good portion of public safety grants that are usually out there, you know, have to do with items, equipment, gear, vehicles, more than, you know, necessarily the buildings. And even the building authority that Nate alluded to earlier relative to municipal buildings or even public safety buildings, I mean, that is something that is very far from coming to fruition. We don't even know what the parameters are on that. That's all I had. I was just adding on.
Thank you.
And can I jump in on grants? And by doing this, right now, I went and looked at grant writers to work with us on a percentage basis, and no one was interested in that because of the level of grants we qualified for. Not to say that it would change their minds, but there's potentially a grant writer that would be willing to work with us on some sort of deal to go and apply for every single one. Because let it be known, we have bandwidth issues already. We're gonna try our best and apply for everything that we can, but I am going to look to propose the outsourcing of some of this to the select board at some point.
Ed?
I'd just like to thank the select board, Nate, and the building committee for such great due diligence on this project. And I hope that everybody at town meeting will support it.
We need 2/3 vote.
Yes.
2/3 vote.
It's a 2/3 vote, yes, and we thank you for that and encourage more than that, because come to the town meeting and vote, hopefully in our favor, but, and talk to your friends, or now that you may have more information, pass it on to them and encourage them. We need the vote. And so, as I said this morning with the seniors, for every 50 people, we need 33 yeses. 50 is our number so that we have a forum for a town meeting, that's why. But for every 50, we need 33 of them on our side, so that,
So we need a quorum of 50 to get it
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Additionally, let people know there will be a story time
33
for young
days.
families.
we,
And there are options for the MART bus to pick up seniors. It will be picking up at the Hub House at 6:30 p.m. on the 22nd. It can also do scheduled stops before then. We ask that people call Sharon with the MART dispatcher for the town by next Wednesday, so that we can set it all up to best utilize the bus.
anything else? Any other comments from the board in terms of anything that's, we would wanna put out there?
Mike, was there anything on,
Not at all.
Nothing, okay, then, we thank you all for coming, and we'll move on from the open session part of the meeting. We have just a couple of things we need to do, but you're welcome to stay, or if you wanna leave,
next week,
we'll
same
pause
time,
long
same
enough to let you
channel.
go, okay?
To that resident in the second row, if there was any wiggle room anywhere, it's not much, and it's in the code, design, planning, compliance line, so.
Do we wanna make a little bit more wiggle room, or do you feel
I think
confident in that?
I'm fairly confident in that we can accomplish at least what we know needs to be accomplished within the parameters of what we have.
Okay.
There are always surprises.
I'm well aware, that's why I'm asking.
And this is a bit higher. There is some contingency built into this.
Okay, for the roof and all that stuff, is there
Yeah,
contingency? Or-
that's the bid price.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the contingency, none of this is tied necessarily to a specific project, but this is outlining. The contingency is general.
I would always err to bump it a little bit for the, oh shit. I don't know how else to say that, but in,
you
you're
wanna-
dealing with construction or anything like that, that's the way this always goes. You start pulling things apart,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they pull the shingles off and find a bunch of rotted plywood.
and they have to re-plywood the whole thing. I know, I had to do that once, it sucked, let me tell ya.
And I don't think we certainly don't talk HVAC at that point. We certainly don't talk sprinklers at that point. That's kind of ADA,
Yeah, that's
electrical.
interior,
like-
we're talking about strictly outside. What my thing is with the amount of siding that is compromised, window, sills, all that stuff that is compromised, just visually, personally looking at it. I know they're professional contractors, but I'm gonna tell you, they're gonna find some stuff,
If you wanna do the remaining 28,000, that's.
just to
in-
make a round
in
number.
Yeah,
my-
that's what I was thinking,
In
yeah,
my professional
yeah,
opinion, that's all
Yeah.
I would recommend. That's what we've been talking about this whole
Yeah.
time.
Just a round number,
Yeah.
so that way there's a little bit of, money in there.
Yeah, if they pull the siding off and there's a bunch of rot along the bottom and they've gotta fix rafters and.
So 1.5.
If we could take no, this is actually an open meeting. If you could take an official vote on that, that would be.
Oh, okay, someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to, 1.5 sounds wishy-washy. I think we need a more exact number to sell.
With a line item of contingency fund.
It's 1,472,000 even as projected and proposed.
That number shows we did our due diligence and we have an exact number, and that's what
And the
that's what we're presenting you folks, but
And a
should something,
28,000 contingency.
yeah, something come out, we have a contingency. Should something come up, we have a contingency, slush fund of $28,000 to.
We could even crank that up a little bit by breaking this
Right,
number up
right.
further,
Yeah.
and we can call it 1.5, and I'll do my research and due diligence into what a contingency would look like
Right.
for a scope. versus ADA. I did this about an hour before this meeting, so
Yeah.
by putting everything together and calling it 300,000, I knew I was in the ballpark.
Yeah.
But
So do
I-
we wanna hold
I-
off on the motion?
Well, I agree
I
with
think
Chris.
it's a better look if we put out an exact number for what we bid on and say we're gonna put this much aside for unknown, hidden expenses.
Mike?
Mr. Chair, it's not uncommon on a construction contract, especially for a renovation, to have 5 to 10% contingency on top of the bid. So I would definitely recommend that we adopt some sort of amount for the contingency. It could be a specific amount, even though it's based on a percentage, and then add that to the portion for the actual work to be performed that you receive proposals for, or bids for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And would you have a figure in mind?
Well, 5 to 10%, I would actually go.
10% of the bid or of the total?
10% of the bid.
Of the bid,
Yeah.
Right.
so that's what, roughly 40
Do we
some
have
odd.
10% of the bid available?
we'll be able, I can, at 1.5, we can make it work.
So
And
47,000.
I'll have justifications on it as well.
Yeah, I like that.
But
I like what you suggested.
to your point, Chris, is that then gives you a specific number.
Right.
And that is common in the industry.
Right.
You rarely go into a construction contract with no contingency.
And I
To
will
Katie's point.
I will line item it out and send it to you tomorrow, but a lot of that was already baked into the incredibly round 300,000.
Okay.
So I can line item it
I
out
like,
for
I
you.
like what Mike said. Put out that contract number
Mhm.
and say we got a 10% contingency
Absolutely.
slush fund, whatever you wanna call it,
Okay.
for unexpected,
Contingency.
contingency for
Can we get a
unexpected,
motion, and how would we word that?
for unexpected, damage that we need to fix.
Alright, I'd like to make a motion that Nate is going to come up with more of a line item breakdown to have the three things that he has here, which is the purchase, the code compliant design and planning, and then also the renovations to equal out, including a contingency plan for a $1.5 million amount.
Okay, motion made, is there a second?
Second.
And second, any discussions or questions?
Well, it's not gonna be $1.5 million.
No.
It's gonna be 10% plus the number you already told us 4 times.
We can make it 1.5.
You can always, yeah,
The 300,000.
But I don't want it to be 1.5, I want it to be an exact number. I
Okay.
don't wanna throw out 1.5 million, that sounds, we need $1.5 million. You know, if we say an exact number that shows that we did our due diligence, we've got our facts.
So,
Yeah.
let me say this, is that 10% just on the 472, or is it on the 300,000 for code compliance, design and planning also?
This
Code
is the
compliance.
472.
472 only?
Yeah.
So you don't need a line item for code compliance?
That's the whole line item besides the 10% for the bid.
The 300?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's code compliance and,
Okay.
and engineering, planning, and that's not gonna cover the entirety of the engineering soup to nuts, but that'll get us
I don't
somewhere
see,
real.
I don't see 300 covering code compliance either, but that's me, but I'm not an engineer. Alright, so 10% of 472,000, that's what you're looking for?
47,000.
47,000 on a line item,
That's the way,
other than the bid price.
that's $47,200 added to the total that he has there now.
I like that.
Yeah.
So it's 1.519,200.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Okay,
Alright, I'm gonna amend my to 1.519200.
0.20 there, isn't it?
No.
No, alright.
1,519,200.
35 We go further.
1,519,200.
Okay, 50 cents.
Second.
The motion's made and second, any further questions or amendments? Okay, we'll take a vote.
Can I
Yeah.
ask one thing after the vote? I would like to give Mr. Wendell the opportunity to ask questions of us in public records so that we could feel safe to answer without breaking the open meeting law, if he was
Sure.
so fit. I knew he wanted to ask after, but we can.
Before we vote?
No, after the
Okay.
vote.
So, Seeing none, all in favor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Mr. Wendell, do you have any questions you'd like to ask at this time?
No, I think you went over just about everything, and I've read most of the documentation online, so. But maybe I could get, maybe from you, Mr. Williams, and then Nate, some comments after the meeting, just to summarize what went
Sure.
on and what you're planning to do.
I recommend you speak with Carrie as well. She
Okay.
is the chair of
Yes.
the Public
Sure.
Safety Building Committee side of this operation.
If she wants to talk to me, sure.
Carrie loves talking to people all day long.
Okay, sounds like.
I know.
All Okay, sounds like a plan. So you're done on the status update, okay? Any questions, further updates from members of the board or your committee for tonight?
I'd just like to say I was really happy with the turnout this morning by the
Yes.
seniors.
Incredibly so.
How many people were there?
Oh, the
It was
the
full.
room was
Full.
full.
Oh, really? Great.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it was the most positive meeting I've been to.
Yeah.
Great, that's
Yeah.
great.
It made us feel good coming out of it.
Good,
Very good.
good.
It went for an hour and a half.
Yeah, there were a number of people that went in there with,
Negative.
no, I don't think so, and walked out going, how do we get the, we actually got someone saying, how could we make some of this go faster?
Excellent.
And they obviously, many of them had, obviously looked at the material, and they, a couple of really were very impressed by the video.
Well, I was just gonna say.
They couldn't
that
believe
video
the
was
fire,
awesome.
what
That
the
was
fire
great.
department and what they.
You and
they-
Chief Hayes did a great job.
That turned it
with
around
that.
for many
Yeah.
of them, that when they
It
saw
was
that.
very enlightening.
In the
Yeah.
police station, they were kinda
Yeah.
shocked by
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so some people that were very shocked. by it.
The closet,
I'm
the
wondering
closet
if
was
it'd
big.
be, I'm wondering if it'd be worthwhile to do a similar video of 48 Gardner. Obviously not the people that are in there, but a run through to show just how much space.
And I do, while talking about the videos, wanna shout out Brittany Blaney Anderson. She was
Yes.
the mastermind
Beautiful job.
behind
Oh,
it
yeah.
all,
Great.
did the
Good
editing,
job, yeah.
wrote the script based on what we had all told her, and that was not funded by taxpayer money, so that's always positive as well.
And that narrator, jeez,
The
what a
narrator
guy.
did a great job. And we wanted to make sure that they were videos that if this occasion did not fly, we could utilize them in the future. So that's why they didn't speak specifically to 48 Gardner Road,
Right.
this, that. We wanted to make sure they could stand a couple of years if
Well,
need be.
my 20-year-old daughter saw the video, and she's a staunch supporter of, public safety, and she started reading me the riot. You let this happen, why did you guys fix it? You guys stink, what are you doing? I said, well, it's a tough balance, but we're doing our
Just said,
best.
yes, dear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She got all fired up over the video.
Doing my best, honey.
Okay.
Nobody can tell that.
Any other comments or questions from anybody? Okay, moving on. Matters not reasonably anticipated of the chair. I don't have anything. Does anyone have anything to bring up at this time?
The clock on the center school,
I got the arms put back up.
is it keeping time?
I can't speak to that. But
No lights.
I believe it's working now.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay.
Because there were new arms on the two sides that I look at, and they were both saying the same thing. So,
Okay, then, public press will do that afterwards. Okay, that's
Yeah.
okay. So could we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.